Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for the final video of the day. So it's finally time to talk about the F1 race that we've just witnessed there. It's been a fantastic day of racing today across all the formulas. So Formula 2 and Formula 3, we've got videos on them that came out this morning. And then it's the time of the Formula 1 right now. And I don't feel it was as good as the Formula 2 and Formula 3 races today, but still a very enjoyable race nonetheless. So let's get into it. Before we even start though, firstly you have to subscribe, that's the rules. Secondly, Nick de Vries and Kevin Magnussen start the race from the pit lane due to making changes to the car. But on the grid, Max Verstappen is on pole position with Charles Leclerc alongside of him. All of them on the mediums, apart from Alonso, Magnussen and Bottas, who start on the hard tyre. Max gets away well, but Yuki Tsunoda is in the gravel. This brings out the safety car. What had happened here was Yuki had just gone for it at the start. Into turn one, he hits Ocon, loses his front wing. Somehow he's going for it, and even tried to do a move around the outside of Perez into turn 3. Fantastic stuff, really. And into turn 5, he's carried a bit too much speed, didn't brake early enough, carried on through the gravel. To be honest with you, he looked great at the start, but he didn't really have this kind of fire throughout the rest of the race, which was a bit disappointing for me because he was on my fantasy team. Magnussen also pit at the start, which was a bit of a strange one because he started in the pit lane, but there you go. The Ferraris were battling for P2 until they were told to stop it immediately. It's a shame. They could have had a fun battle there. Hülkenberg was struggling, really struggling. We saw what the car could do in the wet yesterday when they were able to kind of manage the tyre temperature a little bit better because it was just a cooler environment. But today in the dries, those tyres were heating up so quickly. Everyone was passing him. He was down to P7 after Lance Stroll passed him. Checo was able to get past George Russell, for P11 on lap 10. Now we get into the many incidents between Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, and basically Lando took up Lewis's job. Now Lewis's job normally is to complain about the people in front of him doing track limits based things. Lando Norris decided to take up this job at the start of the race, and I think later on Lewis Hamilton heard that Lando was coming for his job because he was back at it. Full-time track limit reporter Lewis Hamilton was back with us later on in the race. Hülkenberg was one of the first to pit, who didn't pit on the first lap. That was into lap 12, and basically came out of the pits and retired his car. The engine was completely on fire. That was on lap 14. Real shame for Hülkenberg because he looked fantastic all weekend. Didn't look like he was going to have the best race today, but, still a shame to have the weekend end that way after he was such a star yesterday. Anyway, him pulling over to the side of the track, that brings out a VSC. Hamilton and Norris pit for the hards. Gasly, Russell, Ocon, Piastri and Sargent also pit, as do Leclerc and Sainz, who do a double stack. Alonso and Stroll also double stack, which is a bit of a weird one because Alonso started on the hards. So I think Aston kind of panicked a little bit here. They didn't need to pit Alonso at this point. Anyway, the VSC ends. We cut to Bottas, who somehow has front wing damage. I'm not really sure how that happened, but he somehow has front wing damage. Magnussen then passes Bottas and Gasly within one straight. There is a 5-second penalty for Lewis Hamilton for track limits. It's the first 5-second penalty of the day in the F1. And you know what? Lewis Hamilton took it really well. He heard he had the penalty and he dealt with it with grace and decorum and kind of got on with the rest of the race. Oh, wait, no. He moaned for 2 hours. Anyway, we'll get on to that later on. Ocon has an unsafe release. Then there's another penalty for Yuki Tsunoda this time. 5-second penalty for track limits. We then have a battle between Albon, Ocon, Magnussen and Stroll, all battling for P11 on lap 21. Further up the grid, lap 23, it's Checo versus Lewis Hamilton for P4. Back down to the battle for P11. Kevin Magnussen gets very unlucky because Stroll breaks a bit early, so Magnussen breaks a bit early. Albon was behind him, didn't see that they broke a bit early, and kind of just sandwiched Magnussen in between the two of them. This is where Max Verstappen goes into the pits on lap 25, and for the first time in 249 laps, Max Verstappen was not in the lead of the race, as Charles Leclerc overtook him during his pit stop. At the same time, Ocon got a 5-second penalty for an unsafe release. So yes, the streak of Max Verstappen is over. and then a new streak will begin in a bit, don't worry. Perez pits. Max then passes Carlos Sainz for P2. That's on lap 26. Then we get Norris versus Hamilton, part 2. That's on lap 28. But Norris does a fantastic overtake around the outside into turn 5. That's for P4. There's a 5-second penalty for Carlos Sainz. And Perez gets past Russell again, this time for P8. So that's on lap 30. And this is when we get the head-to-head. Leclerc versus Verstappen for P1 in the race on lap 34. And Verstappen is back in the lead by lap 35. And the new streak begins of how many laps can he be in the lead in a row again. De Vries and Magnussen, God, these guys kept on going at it all race, and whenever Magnussen would try and go for a move, De Vries would just push him into the gravel. That happened twice. 5-second penalty for Albon for track limits. Lap 37, Stroll pits, I think for the 3rd time. I don't really know what was going on at Aston, but there you go. 5-second penalty. Nick De Vries, this time for forcing another driver off the track. Ocon pits for his 2nd time on lap 42, as does Bottas, Norris, and no one else. It was just them, sorry. Perez gets past Alonso on for P5 on lap 42. Russell and Albon pit. 5-second penalty. Gasly, track limits. Lewis Hamilton pits, lap 43. Norris looked fantastic here. Did a move on Pierre Gasly. Really, really great stuff. Really good. That was a P6. Alonso pits for mediums on lap 45. That was his final pit stop. Sainz pits and has to serve his penalty and then loses a position to Norris through the pit stop. He'd have to get that back. That was on lap 47. He has a fantastic move, though, on the same lap into turn 5, round the outside. Beautiful stuff from Sainz. Sainz drove so well today. Oh, my God. We'll get onto it a bit later on. But Sainz was incredible. This matched with his sprint shootout performance, he might be the driver of the weekend for me, but we'll get onto that later on. Leclerc pits lap 48. Verstappen pits for mediums on lap 50 of 71. And then Checo follows him in for lap 51. On lap 53, we hear a very interesting team radio between Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff, where it just sounds like Toto Wolff is fed up of hearing Lewis complain about other people's track limits and how bad the car is, so he basically tells him to shut up. 10-second penalty. This is for Yuki Tsunoda. Now, it said it was for track limits, but I think it was because he didn't serve the first penalty correctly, if I understand correct. Anyway, there's a battle for third now between Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, and Sergio Perez. This is on lap 56. Stroll pits again for the mediums on lap 56. I think that was his third one. Perez gets past Lando for P4, and now the battle of Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz starts on lap 58. This was the battle of the weekend. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Great defensive driving, from Carlos Sainz. Knew exactly where both cars were all the time, knew exactly where the DRS line was all the time. What would happen is he'd go up into turn 3, Sainz would make sure he was behind on the DRS line, but on the inside of the corner, so he could swoop around, through up the inside, then on the straight down into turn 4, he would have the DRS advantage, keeping Perez behind him or alongside him. They battled a few times down into like turn 5, turn 6. Really good stuff from Sainz. Unbelievable. At one point they were side by side for like 2 or 3 corners, but Sainz was still able to stay ahead. Really, really great driving from Carlos. Really good stuff. But Perez was finally able to get past him on lap 62. So a move that really, if you compare the two cars, a move that should have been done in 2 corners took 4 laps. And that was because of just how good Sainz was at defending against Perez there. Beautiful stuff from him. On to lap 64 now, and Stroll gets past Albon for P10, the final points playing position. 5-second penalty, Logan Sargent track limits. 5-second penalty, Kevin Magnussen track limits. And on lap 69 of 71, Max Verstappen gets his big old balls out and pits for softs because he didn't have the fastest lap, and that was angering him. You know what? This is such good stuff here from Red Bull and from Max. To have, there's a 23-second gap between Max and Leclerc on the second to last lap of the race. It's a 20-second pit stop. They're risking it there because if something goes wrong, they're throwing away a win. But they go, what? We're so confident in Max's driving. We're so confident in this pit crew. We want that fastest lap. They go for it. they do it. Max gets the softs on, and on the last lap, he sets the fastest lap of the race and wins the Austrian Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc comes home in second. It's Sergio Perez in third. Fantastic recovery for him from 15th on the grid. Fourth goes to Carlos Sainz. Lando Norris gets driver of the day in fifth. Alonso is in sixth, so Alonso's we're on the podium every race until the end of the season from now on. That lasted one race, so that was good. Lewis Hamilton finishes in seventh with his teammate George Russell behind him in eighth. Gasly in ninth, and Stroll completes the points places in 10th. 11th was Albon, 12th Ocon, 13th Sargent, 14th Peugeot, 15th for De Vries, 16th Bottas, 17th Piastri, 18th Yuki, 19th Kevin Magnussen, and the only driver not to finish the race was Nico Hülkenberg. What a fun race that was. A great weekend all around. I think just every session has been enjoyable. Even the one practice session we had, the qualifying, sprint shootout, sprint race, feature race, the F2, the F3 have been phenomenal. This has been, I think, the best F1, best racing weekend as a whole of the entire season. I think everyone's performed fantastically here. We'll be back tomorrow with our driver rating, so you'll find out who my driver of the day was not just for the day, because the sprint race gets taken into account as well, so I'll be across there, and also who the worst driver of the weekend was as well. I don't know, as I stand here right now, I'll sit here right now, I don't know who that is. I'm not sure who the worst driver of the weekend is, so you'll find out as I do. Then, of course, next weekend is Silverstone. Now, will the Max Verstappen curse of Silverstone continue? He's had the last 2 years he should have won the Silverstone Grand Prix, but for reasons outside his control, he hasn't won either of them. Will the curse end, or will we have Sergio Perez win Silverstone, or maybe someone who isn't even in a Red Bull, if you can fathom a non-Red Bull based driver winning a race, because I don't know if I can at this point. So that'll be there for next week. Of course, as I said, driver ratings out tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe for all that good stuff. Let me know what you thought of the Austrian Grand Prix in the comments, and yes, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. The IndyCar's on soon. I'm gonna go watch that. Gonna have a great time. I hope you have a great time too. Goodbye.